I flew into Delhi in the north, and then I took a train from there to Kota, and then I rode in a car from Kota to Udaipur, and then flew to Kolkata, and then flew to Kolhapur.
As a white person, what was it like to be on any street in an Indian city?
What's the name of this dog?
Rebel.
Good job, Heidi. I'm Naman Pandit, and in this episode, featured not expert is Beni Wilson. Our discussion today revolves around Beni's first visit to India, and we explore his experiences through the perspective of an American person's first time in the subcontinent. We start with the similarities between America and India, which might surprise you actually. That list is not as short as you might imagine, and then move on to covering the differences, starting with the smaller ones and going all the way to the largest. Some of the topics that we cover, especially those around religion, can be slightly triggering for some people, so viewer discretion is advised.
It seemed like a lot of the nice buildings in Kolkata were built 50 or 100 years ago and weren't quite as well maintained since then, maybe.
What about the food? Any stomach upset stories? Any dodgy?
Yeah, by the end, if you're struggling to survive, struggling to make ends meet, figuring out what to do with your trash is the least of your concerns, I guess.
Yeah, and to close out, 3 things that every American going must do or know.
Well, I was impressed at the overall religiosity. It seemed like even the non-religious people still went to the temples to great.
In line with our theme of learning from somebody that's just 2 steps ahead instead of an expert, my goal with this episode is to inform any American that is planning a trip to India and help them figure out how they can optimize the main course of the experiences that they're seeking, along with a side of here's what to expect.
About a quarter of the time, but nobody else was wearing masks, so I felt a little silly wearing one. And part of that.
Subscribe on YouTube and any podcast app for weekly episodes featuring not experts every Wednesday and daily clips from those episodes on Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And now, without any further ado, here's Beni and his 2 daughters that crashed the interview at various times. Welcome to the Ready, Set, Do podcast, where we learn from journeys of not experts who are just 2 steps ahead of us. Beni, welcome.
Thank you.
And before we begin, also thanks for hosting me. Guys, this is Beni's den that I'm crashing here. Not just for this podcast, I was also just visiting. But yeah, and we'll be talking over your experiences while in India. Why don't you just share which 5 cities you used?
Yeah, so I flew into Delhi in the north, and then I took a train from there to Kota, and then I rode in a car from Kota to Udaipur, and then flew to Kolkata, and then flew to Kolhapur, and then flew back to Kolkata, and then flew out from there.
Okay, makes sense. So yeah, so you're a decent mix of big and small cities,
Yes.
kind of in there. And yeah, as we were chatting earlier, the way we wanted to structure this was to go over kind of all of your experiences under the lens of similarities as well as differences. So let's just dive in with the similarities.
Yeah.
I wouldn't think there would be too many, but having said that, what were some things that you found kind of throughout your travels while in India were similar-ish to how stuff is in the US that obviously you're used to given from here?
It was probably easier to notice the differences than the similarities for starters, just because sometimes you just don't even notice that it's the same because you're used to it. One thing that surprised me how similar it was the airports. They were just like pretty much the same.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some small differences. They made you go through security during layovers, which we usually don't do in the US. But yeah, I was impressed at how modern the airports were, and yeah.
In terms of signage and such, did you ever struggle to find, where to go? And
I think all the airports I was at had English.
yeah,
all of them had at least two languages, at least English and Hindi, and then usually a third local state language too.
And it helps that you can somewhat understand Hindi, which I'm sure that's not true for most Americans.
Yes.
But I'm sure that was something that, helped you. I don't know, maybe.
Yes. Naman was one of my first Hindi teachers who attached us some Hindi phrases.
And some voice notes.
Yeah.
I remember when you recorded your kids singing Mashli Jal Ki Rani Hai. I sent it to my mom straight away. That was the first thing I did. And we were all just completely blown away. And obviously my mom and my parents have met you all. They love you.
Yeah.
They just are, ever so glad For for getting a chance to know you, and for all that you do for myself and international students such as we. But yeah, so airports were similar. Yeah, coming back, what were some of the other similarities?
Um, I was mostly overwhelmed by differences by the end of the trip, but I remember commenting to one of my friends I was visiting, or maybe it was my friend's cousin, who I hadn't met before the trip, but I remarked, everything's so different here except the people. People are the same. Like, people are people wherever you go. You drive down the street, you see a group of teenagers laughing together on the street. It's like, yeah,
Yeah,
so much of the context is different. The shops are different. The streets are narrower. The cars are backwards. The traffic is different. But the teens laughing on the street corner, that is the same. The man sitting in his shop on his phone waiting for a customer,
yeah.
or somebody just standing waiting at a bus stop or sitting on a bench or whatever. I don't know.
With that, that's a very interesting call out. And my follow up to that is, when with that group of teenagers laughing, did you notice that maybe they were louder? They were, were they, within that context, were there any differences to how you would see a general group of teenagers in the US?
Yeah. Um,
Or not really?
I don't know. They're These days, the teens in the US are maybe more antisocial.
I was gonna say,
It depends on
fair enough, but what you
the teens, but
yeah,
yeah.
but on the outside, it will look mostly
But yeah, it's like I can't understand. They're joking in Marathi or Bengali or something. I don't remember which stuff it was. But
yeah, no, for sure.
but it's like I don't know what they said, but it's yeah. You don't need to know.
Nature then.
But yeah,
Yeah, it's just them having a good time for sure.
right.
Were there any other similarities, or is that?
The church that I visited was surprisingly similar, other than most of it being in Hindi with an English translator. I was surprised at how similar. And I do have some. I feel like Christianity can be more adapted to local cultures than it has been sometimes. That uh, I maybe would have preferred to see a church in Kolkata that was more reflecting the local culture somehow more, rather than just duplicating a Western model, because Christianity was originally Middle Eastern and it's uh, taken on a Western flavor in recent years in certain countries. I don't know. Anyway, so that was a little bit of a tangent, but I feel like,
No, I actually think that's interesting. So you're saying that your experience at that church was not too different from your experience,
yeah, when you some of the songs,
but it wouldn't. Isn't that expected? Like,
yeah, I guess.
but you're saying maybe they could learn in Bengali.
Yeah, it seemed like the band seemed like an American band. The songs sounded American.
I remember you had put out like a very poignant, very heartfelt message around that. That was the first time in your, recent travel experiences, like for that trip, I mean, where you felt like you weren't alone. Do you
Yeah,
that? Do you share a little
that was
about that?
that was one of my favorite experiences. I guess I was mostly just missing home by that point. A week into the trip, halfway through the trip, and starting to feel the culture shock and ready to come home and missing familiarity.
Mm.
And then going to the church was really refreshing to feel like, oh, even though these people don't look like me, there's only one other white person in the church. I still feel like the kindred spirit, that the same spirit of God living in us, and the same Jesus that we're worshiping, and that we are family. Even if I don't know them, there's some special connection that I could feel that was, yeah.
Yeah, and I'll try and link that to the show notes so that somebody can see. Because I remember when you were sharing that, you could see the emotion that you were going through, and I don't know, it like it left clearly. I remember, and it left an impact on me because as I could tell, it left an impact on you.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Realizing that missing my people, I wasn't necessarily missing Americans in some ways. I was missing Christians.
Yeah, look, that's fair, right?
realizing these are my people, even if they look different, even if they don't speak my language.
You're still united.
Yeah, we're still one big family.
Absolutely. Amazing. And is that, is that, yeah, I'd love three.
I think those were the only similarities I picked up.
Fair enough. And it's funny that even out of those three, two were like semi-ish, which is crazy. And that's obviously what I would have expected.
Yeah, I mean, cars were the same except they were mirror images. I knew we'd be driving on the left side of the road, but it took me longer to get used to entering the car from the opposite side.
Yeah. I'm surprised you say that over the two-wheeler extravaganza that
Well,
India is.
yeah, so the other vehicles were different, having the
Which makes the whole experience just completely different.
right, and the traffic was different. Like the highways were pretty similar. The roads in town were
Interesting.
narrower in general, and
Right.
people not following the stoplights, and very few stoplights and stop signs. So
Yeah.
in Kolkata, they followed the traffic laws the best.
Really,
In other
that's
places,
surprising.
Kota didn't have a single stoplight or stop sign in the whole city. My friend there was explaining to me that recently they had purposefully removed all of them and to help traffic flow better. And it flowed. It, it did flow the same as in the US, but it worked.
So, okay, perfect. So obviously, I know there would have been a few differences. We just went over one, and we can also like come back to that. But maybe if you don't mind walking us through, like the least different, or like progressing to the biggest differences. If it's a tall order, and you don't have to stick to that, but I feel like it would be engaging for me and listen to it from that perspective. So, what were some of the smallest differences that you found?
Yeah.
Maybe we can restructure it.
I don't know. There are plenty of little differences, I guess.
So, actually, before we begin to set the stage with the driving and traffic situation, would you put that in the small differences bucket or big differences bucket, or somewhere in between?
Maybe somewhere in the middle.
Okay, fair enough.
It might even be easier to categorize versus by expected differences and unexpected differences.
Let's do it.
So, like language and food, I expected to be different,
Of course.
and I knew driving would be on the left side of the road. I'd heard the traffic was crazy. um, and other things that were more unexpected, like seeing cows in the middle of the road,
Right.
or all the three-wheelers at
Wait, the the autos.
all the auto rickshaws. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So makes sense, and we will come to that. But since you mentioned food and language, let's just quickly get that out of the way. For language, did you feel like you pretend for a second you don't understand Hindi? I feel like that's important because most Americans that are visiting
Right.
probably don't. But would you say that you were able to get by decently enough? Do you have any anecdotes around language specifically?
Yeah. Yeah, so it's been about 2 years now of casual Hindi study, so I was able to understand about a quarter of the Hindi and guess about half. Um, but yeah, in two of the cities, in Kolkata and Kolhapur, I didn't understand the language at all. And a lot of the people didn't even speak Hindi,
Right.
and some people were in everywhere I visited, there were a few people who were fluent in English and a few people who were halfway there.
Yeah.
Who, yeah, you could hold a conversation with, but if you're tired, it's a little hard to come up with conversations.
Right. But in terms of getting around,
Yeah, the tourist areas, and like the airports, there were always people fluent in English. It was easy to get around to the tourist spots. Once you got more off the beaten path, it was harder to find people that spoke English, and like calling taxi drivers in Kolkata, I had to do that maybe 3 times, and the first time, I mean, he didn't speak too much English, and I think I tried speaking some Hindi on the phone, and I think he spoke a little bit, but with the phone connection and accent difference,
yeah, that's
it was so hard to understand, and he's asking where he wants to pick me, where I want him to pick me up, and I tried to describe it and we're not communicating. And
Yeah, I mean, that's tough. I feel like even when I'm in Calcutta, like it's hard, right? To in the
yeah,
hospital explain to somebody where to pick you up from, like, it's my location.
right.
Can you please come to my location? But
It's like, don't you see it in the app?
yeah, no, for sure. Um, I mean, I get that, but maybe there's ways to circumvent that. Maybe not. Like, I feel like as an extreme, you just cancel that, right? And if I should
Right.
right?
Yeah, so my solution, every time I was leaving from a place where I had a friend who spoke English and Bengali, and so I handed the phone to my friends like, "Here, you talk to the taxi driver."
Obviously, yeah.
Because
Maybe somebody doesn't have a friend, they can do that with like their hotel staff. Maybe request them to do that for you. Although if you're going somewhere and then you have to come back, I don't know what you would do there. But no, that makes sense. So that's language. And then what about the food? Any stomach upset stories? Any dodge?
yeah, by the end, so I was trying to be careful about what I ate and, only drinking bottled water. I'd heard that was a big deal, and I for the first half of the trip, my stomach was handling everything fine.
What were you eating normally?
Usually restaurant food and home cooking. Um, my hosts, I think, were pretty good about cooking with bottled water, and
Nice.
when in doubt, I would go for stuff I knew had been boiled, like tea. And twice I had street food in Kolkata, and I don't think either of those bothered my stomach.
Let's
That like, um, something I ate uh somewhere towards the end of the trip threw my stuffed cough. And
like street food?
no, it was either fruit that had a peel on it, which I felt like shouldn't have bothered me, or a fairly nice restaurant. I think it was, I don't know if it was the restaurant or the fruit. Like,
Where was this?
it's in Kolkata.
But I mean, the restaurant would surprise me if I'm being honest.
Yeah, either way, she just ate have enough.
Yeah,
Something that day bothered me, and
gotcha.
all I had that day was restaurant food and fresh fruit with a peel on it. So I thought I'd be safe. And I certainly don't blame my host.
No, obviously, yeah.
Right. But then the next day I was at a wedding, and the wedding was really cool. We could probably talk more about
Yeah,
that. But
to that.
at the wedding they had these drinks. They were somebody called them mocktails. They're non-alcoholic. You probably know what they are. They're salty. They were blue in color with like mint and ginger, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if there's probably a name for it, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's like fizzy, right? It's soda.
Um,
Or it can.
I don't think it was when I had it. For, I guess it could be. Yeah,
Yeah.
it might have been. Um, salted drinks are weird as an American. It's weird to have fancy drinks.
Oh.
And another host fed me a salty yogurt drink.
Oh, yeah, buttermilk.
Yeah, buttermilk
Buttermilk.
is what they called it.
I love it.
And
Right.
another Indian fed it to me in the U.S. too. And both times it's like, it's interesting. I'm not used to salty drinks.
Yeah. Have you heard of kefir?
Yes.
It's basically like kind of that, but like the Indian kefir is way thinner.
Yeah.
And yeah, I love it. It's great. It has all the benefits of probiotics. But that's a great point and not something I'd
Yeah.
consider that as Americans, you're not exposed to anything that's
Salty drinks.
a salty
Salty
probiotic. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, for sure.
Yeah. So anyway, they had this drink. It was apparently a local specialty. At the wedding, one of the wedding ceremonies, I found myself at a table with several middle-aged men who were co-workers of the bride's father. And I hadn't met the bride before the wedding, but
Wow.
that's where the open seat was. And a couple of them halfway spoke English, so we're trying to halfway communicate. They tell me they all work at a car factory together in Solapur, another town not so far away, I guess. And
Yeah.
anyway, a server comes by with a platter of these drinks. They're like, "Oh, you have to try these." And I was reluctant to drink them because I doubted they were made with bottled water.
Probably not.
And if they were made with the local water, who knows? And they're like, "Oh, you have to try this. It's our local specialty," or whatever. And so I sipped a little bit to be polite, and they're like, "Yeah, drink all of it. just have it all. So I drank all of it. Then a server comes by a few minutes later with another pint. I have another one of those. So I went through 2 of those, and I'm sure that didn't help my stomach from the day before. So it's the rest of the trip, I was having some minor issues. I mean, it was all manageable. It was fine.
Like nothing too crazy.
Nothing too crazy. So my stomach didn't like me for it.
I see. So, like, you probably know this or you probably saw this, but most Indian households, like, almost automatically have RO filtering. So, reverse osmosis.
Yeah.
So, even though it's not technically boiled, obviously, but again, in most households, I can't speak for restaurants and such. I don't know what they're doing, but the generally accepted norm is that you RO filter it
Okay.
because we've had a few struggles just historically with like bad water,
Yeah.
cholera, and all of that.
Yeah.
So there was a big push for that, and I feel like largely that has been solved. But yeah, I can understand how even if it's like one or two other random strains
Yeah.
that get mixed in somehow and that are
Yeah.
new to you, that could probably wreak havoc.
Right. One of my hosts mentioned reverse osmosis filter. Yeah, and I asked for bottled water. They're like, "Well, it's reverse osmosis filter." And I
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
was like, "Does that kill the bacteria?" It does. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
So like it does. It does for sure. Yeah. It removes everything.
All right.
Honestly, some people hate on it because it even removes some of the helpful minerals and such.
Okay.
But so anyway, so that's language and food. Next, I wanna examine people.
Yes.
So remove hosts because obviously these are your friends and they love you and you love them. So that doesn't count. Their families don't count. As a white person, what was it like to be, say, on any street in an Indian city?
Yeah. Um, I noticed regional differences between the different places. When I was in Rajasthan, like Kota in particular, the people reminded me more of what Midwesterners that are a little more chill and less expressive. Like, people are nice, but not emotionally so, if that makes sense.
Interesting.
So, um, yeah. And in all the places I visited, the people were generally friendly and maybe even friendlier than Americans would be to a strange American.
Describe friendly.
Yeah. So people would strike up conversation on the street. Um, and
Organically?
yeah, that's especially in Rajasthan. Although,
Like, what would they say?
in one case, there's a group of boys, and I was with my friend, and they saw me play. They were playing basketball, no, soccer probably, and um, they called over to me. They're like, "Hey, who are you?" No. Uh,
Like in Hindi?
no, in English. In English, who are you? Which I think in my understanding is in Hindi, the direct translation phrase is more appropriate for addressing a stranger. Who are you? In English, we don't really. It's maybe a little bit rude to say "Who are you" to a stranger.
Oh, I see what you mean.
But I think in Hindi that's more natural
I
for the
yeah, ish. Yeah, kinda. Yeah, yeah.
But anyway, when I was yeah, my friend with me translated in Hindi back to explains to them in Hindi.
He's the friend visitor from the US.
Yeah,
Got it. And this is Raghav, right?
yeah,
Shout out Raghav.
yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Raghav. There was, there's a girl on the plane. I think she's sitting next to me. She's like early 20s, and she didn't say anything the whole plane flight. And then once we landed, she's like, "So where are you coming from? And why are you coming here?" And just like in a friendly sort of way. Yeah.
Okay.
In a chill sort of way. Um, and when I was in Udaipur, which is more of a touristy city, um, there were two random guys on the street who struck up conversation because they were trying to sell me something. They're also friendly for 3 or 5 minutes of conversation. It's like, "Would you like to come see my shop?"
Uh,
And then two other random people on the street who weren't trying to sell me anything, and they just struck up conversation. there was a wedding parade going through. And so
Okay.
one other tourist from another city in India, it's like, hey, have you ever seen anything like this before? You should try to get in with the parade and go to the dinner afterwards. That's more natural here. It might not seem not natural to you, but it's normal here. You should do it. I don't know if it's normal even in India. You could get absolutely crap. This was this random guy. This random guy was from Kerala. And I was in he was visiting Udaipur. So
It's a long way
yeah.
from home. Yeah.
And then there were cousins of the groom in the wedding parade. The parade stopped and they passed out ice cream to everybody on the street.
They do that.
Which, I mean, yeah, I guess it's not there. But I think there are two teenage boys who start asking, who are you? What brings you here? Where are you from? Maybe they started with, where are you from? And
Right.
so anyway, it just seemed like people were friendly
And nobody came up to you for selfies and such? Did that happen?
no, but I saw two other Americans posing for selfies at the Victoria Memorial.
Was it women?
Two women, yeah.
I feel like it might just be like a gender thing.
Right.
Because this is something that you just hear a lot where
Sure.
tourists just are asked for selfies.
Yeah. So at the wedding, everybody wanted their picture with me.
Okay.
Outside of my friend's wedding.
Yeah.
The wedding parade I stumbled upon in Udaipur. But
Makes sense.
yeah, I think more people, well, no, probably more people still got pictures with the bride and the groom, but it almost seemed like more people wanted photos with me than with the bride.
Which makes sense because obviously if you're there, they know that you are somebody's friend.
Yeah.
And it's acceptable and probably won't be, and you also have like a nice demeanor.
Yeah, it's like, you see, not total strangers, but there's
Yeah.
a little bit of connection. And I didn't see a single white person in Kolhapur outside the airport.
That doesn't surprise me.
And in Kosha, I don't think I saw a single white person.
Also doesn't surprise me.
In Kolkata and
Yeah.
New Delhi and Udaipur, there were a few for sure. And in the airports and on the planes, there were usually some too.
True. And on the topic of aggressive people, did you have any other dodgy-ish experiences? Maybe, I mean, I think Kolkata is somewhat renowned for that. But so people can be salesy there.
That was the difference between the shopkeepers in Udaipur versus Kolkata. In Udaipur, they were friendly. They struck up conversation for a couple minutes before mentioning their business. Try to make friends first, I guess, or something. But in Kolkata, they were a lot more aggressive. Like, oh, come see my shop. I've got such fine silks and shawls. And I went to the New Market district of Kolkata, actually right after church. So I was super refreshed from church. And then after spending an hour at Old Market, I was completely strange. It's like, I want to go up.
And you wanted to just kind of walk around and see.
Yeah,
And they were preaching to you in English.
Yes. So
That's pretty
the shopkeepers and the taxi drivers in Delhi and Udaipur, the salespeople there were all pretty good with English. But yeah, the taxi drivers in Kolkata, not so much, but
Right.
Anyway, so yeah, there's so many people crowded in the market. So it only has stalls and vendors.
When you're getting,
We just took a taxi back to my friend's place.
But also, I mean, when somebody's like, buy this from me, what a missed approach.
You have to say no about 10 times. No exaggeration.
Like, what if you just ignored them and walked?
Yes, that's the other.
But then you probably
And they still follow you.
Did you ever feel unsafe while in India?
No. Yeah, it wasn't like, some big cities in the US, if you're walking around Chicago at night, you feel a little unsafe. Like you might get mugged.
Yeah, and
You're walking safely for who else is on the street.
so just to clarify, I don't just mean unsafe from people, but really just like you might be lost, or I'm saying all possible definitions that could come under the umbrella of unsafe.
Yeah, I don't think I ever felt unsafe other than feeling like I might get cheated out of my money, which never too much money. And with the exchange rate, if they charge me double for something, it's only $5 to me.
If even, yeah.
Anyway, But there was one time uh I left my friend in Kolkata to go visit another friend's parents in Kolkata. Or oh, what was the name of the town? It was right across the river.
Is it Howrah?
Howrah. Yes, there we go. And the the taxi driver dropped me at what he said was the right address. I get out of the car, and then I look on my phone, and GPS shows me it's a 3-minute walk up the street. And I was like,
Not bad.
not bad. I follow the GPS, and it takes me down this little dark back alley. And this is, yeah, it's after sunset. And if I'd been in a narrow dark alley in most American cities, I'd be a little nervous. But
Right.
in that one, there's this random Indian lady who's walking down the alley. She doesn't seem scared. I'm like, okay, if there's a woman walking through here by herself and she's not scared, then I don't have to be
Fine. Yeah.
And it turns out GPS was taking me the wrong way. That actually the taxi driver had dropped me really close to the front sidewalk to get back to their house. And GPS was taking me around to the back of the house where there would be a fence, so that I couldn't get to her. So anyway, my friend's dad calls me. He's not quite fluent in English. He's like, "Where are you?" And I'm like, I'm close." It's like, "What do you see?" I'm like,
That's actually such a, like, Indian starter pack question where you're trying to give somebody directions. You're like, tell me what you see. And then you use that to direct them to you.
I was trying to describe what I saw around, but he's like, "I'll meet you back on the main street in front of the bank in 3 minutes."
Yeah, like, oh, that's smart. Yeah,
And anyway, that's how he found me. But
makes sense.
anyway, that was one of the most interesting experiences or funniest experiences, walking down this dark back alley of Howrah by myself.
Yeah, I don't think I've done that. I might have, but yeah, it's been too to remember. And then from there, what were your impressions just on the sites to see that are there in India? Like, just purely from a tourist perspective.
Yeah.
Would you recommend, and I know you're pretty well traveled, like you've been to other places,
Yeah.
you've been to China, I know you've been to Europe here and there, but where would you put your overall tourism experience in India versus, other destinations that exist in the world for Americans?
Yeah. Um, I haven't been outside the US too much. Well, I've been to Beijing and London and Costa Rica. So, um, let's see. In Kolkata, there was a fair amount of stuff to do. Museums. It's a major cultural center, I guess you could say.
It
There's
is definitely.
the Victoria Memorial was impressive. Seemed like something out of Washington D.C. or something. Right? If you compare it to the Lincoln Memorial, probably, or something like that.
Mhm.
um, uh, I felt like the museums were maybe a little more modest or more rundown than the.
Just in Kolkata or other museums?
I might have only gone to museums in Kolkata.
Okay.
Um, so, um, yeah, like compared to Washington D.C., for example, the museums in Kolkata weren't as impressive. But I still learned some stuff about local history and stuff. I learned about the Indian independence movement there.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it seemed like a lot of the nice buildings in Kolkata were built 50 or 100 years ago and weren't quite as well maintained since then, maybe. I don't know if,
Yeah. Yeah.
as a local, how you feel about that statement, but
I mean, I don't honestly know how you would maintain it outside of obviously like cleaning,
Yeah.
repainting it, stuff like that.
yeah,
Is that what you were referring to?
maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, or sure.
Sometimes you pass this building on the street. Looks like it must have been this nice hotel at some point, but it's falling apart and abandoned. And
Yeah, so that's a great thing, and I've wondered about this, but my impression has been like it's not too dissimilar from some places in like Europe and such,
yeah,
which are also really old.
I mean, Baltimore, for example, you could see some of, or even St. Louis. You
Yeah,
see
I just feel generally US
old
isn't
structures.
most apples to apples because old stuff in Europe, or sorry, old stuff in US is what, 200 years old.
Right. Oh.
Europe is actually old. India is probably older. So I find that to be a little bit more apples to apples. And I've never been to Europe, but friends that I've talked to that have said that it's really not that different. What makes it aesthetically different is just kind of how much, as you said, how well maintained it is, and kind of how much like trash is around it. That's it. I feel like if you just kind of removed all the trash from India, we are basically Europe at this point.
Okay.
Again, that's like my make believe world.
Having only spent half a day in London as my only experience of Europe, that's probably a fair comparison.
Yeah, and I'm sure even there's parts of London that are new and that have been made into parks and such, and Kolkata has those as well. I don't know if you got to go to Salt Lake or yeah, so these are imagine like they added on these parks much later.
Were there a lot of hospitals in that area?
There are. So if everything I like
Drove through.
yeah, and actually the airport is in that area ish. So they use the exact US block model. So if you divide it into blocks A, B, C, D, E, each block has its stuff.
Okay.
And the only thing is they could only do that because they got the chance to build that.
Right.
Calcutta itself is so old that the only way to actually fix stuff is to like destroy people's homes.
Okay.
There's just no other way to.
Yeah. Because I know in the U.S., most cities were built after, a lot of cities were built after the invention of cars,
Right.
at least the Western cities. So, I mean, the roads were designed for cars, whereas
Exactly. Yep.
it was, in Udaipur, it was really obvious. There's this reasonably big core to the city. You could walk the whole thing, so maybe a couple miles in size or a few kilometers, where there's no roads that cars can pass through.
Interesting.
And probably just limited to the motorcycles or the auto rickshaws or walking. But then there's this ring road all around that. And so if you're trying to get from here to here, your driver takes you all the way around the circumference. Anyway, so and it takes 45 minutes with the traffic, and you probably could have walked it 45 minutes. But anyway,
Yeah, that's fair.
so yeah, that was interesting. In terms of tourism in Udaipur, it was really cool. The forts and the palaces.
I actually haven't been.
Okay.
I'm always wanted and go.
So when I first got into Udaipur, coming through the outskirts, it just looked the same as Kota or Delhi. It's like just all these little shops crowded together, and some nice and some not as nice buildings that they're in, and crowded streets with trash on the ground, whatever. But then once I actually got into the heart of the city, where all the palaces and forts are, it had a magical charm to it, especially at sunset. I almost didn't go on the boat tour because I'm like, I've been on boats before, but I got I did the sunset boat tour because my friend highly recommended it. And once I was out on the water, I was like, oh, this is magical. Seeing all the forts with the sunset lighting was super cool and peaceful to be out on the lake. And yeah, the rooftop dining was cool. Hey, Heidi. Oh, did you draw that? Wow, that's actually pretty good. Staying in the lines. You stayed in the lines pretty well.
Do you want it out?
Sure. Do you want to show that to the camera, Ali? Here, why don't you show your work to the camera? Look.
What's the name of this dog?
Rebel.
Rebel.
Good job, Ivy.
All right, she likes Paw Patrol. All our kids like Paw Patrol.
Yeah. Yeah. So next, I want to examine how you felt in terms of, like, say you're walking around, our neighborhood here, or say you're in any other American city. How much did you miss I'll just use the word lack of pollution, but that would include sound pollution, just like from honking and such, air pollution, and also obviously like in the ground, just how much, trash and such there is. Like for you as somebody that probably doesn't see as much of that, how big of an impression did that make in your mind towards this new or this host country that you were traveling to?
Yeah. The air pollution stood out to me the most, although I did definitely notice all three. aspects that you mentioned. But yeah, the air pollution, I think part of it's the time of the year.
Mhm.
That in December it's worse than usual. But yeah, in both Delhi and Kolkata, the pollution was just really bad. And I wore a mask about a quarter of the time, but nobody else was wearing masks, so I felt a little silly wearing one, and probably should have worn one anyway. But um, yeah, and then the noise pollution I noticed, um, even even in the host houses I was staying in, you could still hear people talking outside, still hear cars. Um, and part of that, ooh,
Sorry.
No, you're good. No worries.
I guess there's a lot of agricultural burning, putting smoke into the air, and whatever puts smoke into the air in cities.
Cars, factories.
Yeah. Somebody told me maybe even the cooking over open flames would maybe affect pollution. I don't know.
Something I read was that apparently even the cars don't matter. The real thing that does the most damage is just factory emissions.
Okay. Yeah.
Those are
There was one power plant they saw in one city that was just belching tons of smoke into the air.
was it like black?
Yeah, it was pretty dark smoke outside.
It's funny you mentioned that because I've seen that here as well, but somehow here the smoke is white.
There's the government regulates the emissions and makes them put some kind of filter system on the smoke coming out of the power plants and factories here.
Right.
Um,
But yeah, so
yeah.
continuing with
So the noise pollution, yeah, I could hear noise most of the time, and it didn't really bother me, although I think there were one or two times I was falling asleep, and even in the host house, I can hear the street noise outside or whatever. Probably jet lag didn't help. If I wasn't jet lagged, I would have fallen asleep easier.
but yeah, but even
But anyway,
you were hearing sounds.
yeah,
That's that.
and it helped me understand high-rise apartments. That I stayed in a high-rise apartment 4 nights, I think, or 3 nights. And I realized, oh, once you're up on, like, whatever, the 32nd floor, you don't know the street noise anymore. It gives you a peace. Maybe that's why people like high-rise apartments.
Were the views nice?
Yeah, you could see this huge sea of pastel buildings, all these square, rectangular, pastel-colored buildings of Kolkata disappearing into the smog. It,
Yeah. I don't picture it.
yeah.
And that leaves out the ground stuff.
Yeah, there was a lot of trash on the road that I'm not used to seeing coming from America. I don't know. You can walk around it, I guess, but I'm a small town guy. I living in a city with 120,000 people, I feel like is a little too big for my comfort. But after visiting India, it helped me realize I still live in a quiet city and it's still spacious. The buildings are just compact and clustered together as they were in the Indian cities.
Yeah.
Um,
It.
Why do you think that is? Like, what do you think causes that type of like behavior? Like, I guess just look
Yeah.
for your tape. I know there's no right answer, but
Part of it is poverty. Just there's so many people living in poverty in Kolkata in particular that, I mean, where do they put their trash if they don't have a house? Or I don't know.
yeah. And that's fair. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing I have trouble wrapping my head around because a lot of them do have houses. And
Yeah, at one point, a hired driver who was driving me from Kota to Udaipur, it's like a 5-hour road trip with me and a guy who didn't speak English. With me tried to communicate some in Hindi, but anyway, we stop at a little roadside stand that's selling snacks and chai, and they service chai in paper cups. And when we're done eating, he shows me, you just throw it on the ground. There all these little paper cups and other trash strewing I think it was gravel ground, and
yeah.
a little gravel kind of parking slash dining area in front of the stall. And that's so I just like throw mine on the ground. So I guess part of it's just a bigger cultural concept of what to do with your trash. Um, I don't really know the answer of why.
Yeah, which is fair. And that makes me think So if that person was seated here, right,
Mhm.
and if they asked us, why can't I do that? I've thought about that before, and if I'm being super honest, I wouldn't know what to tell them.
Sorry,
Like, I know why, but do you?
because we want to keep our city clean. I
But
guess
why?
is what an American would say.
But why?
It's prettier. I don't know. Screw our city beautiful.
And I'm agreeing. Yeah, I'm just trying to. It's just something that I've thought about a lot, and
Yeah.
I haven't actually gotten anywhere.
I think also part of it is just the struggle to survive and make a living is so much tighter in India. I felt like
Yeah,
than here.
that's definitely valid.
Americans, we feel like we're struggling to make ends meet, but that's with a nice house, or even if we feel it's small,
Mm.
a lot of Indians would consider it as large. And I didn't realize carpet was a luxury until visiting India, and like even the upper middle class houses don't have much carpet, and it's uh I think part of it is the humidity control and climate control.
Which is that marble works best, but yeah, marble is cold in summers and kind of okay-ish during winters. Also, mostly there are no winters.
And even the middle class, I think I was staying in some of the nicer houses, and most of them had a permanently open window, at least in the bathroom, sometimes in another room of the house.
Yeah.
And it's letting the smoke, the smog into the house for one thing. And but
Also,
that's the humidity. And
right.
when it doesn't get below 60 Fahrenheit in the winter, you don't have to have insulation and heating.
Yeah.
I can understand a window AC unit and fans in the summertime, but
Yeah.
but
What do you do?
where it gets down to minus 10 Fahrenheit, as the winter,
Everything. Yeah.
gotta have everything insulated.
Yeah.
And then you can have carpet because,
Yeah.
you can
Nice and warm.
it's easy to control the climate in the house.
Right.
So some of that difference, I think, is just the climate, that if you're closer to the equator, you don't have to have as much insulation for winter time, and in the northern climates you do, and that affects the housing standards, I guess.
Probably something in there. Yeah.
Anyway, if you're struggling to survive, struggling to make ends meet, figuring out what to do with your trash is the least of your concerns, I guess.
Yeah. That's so true. And I think back to my own journey, and it's funny because I definitely had the luxury or privilege of a good education my whole life. And yet it took me up until the point where I was in sophomore year, so second year of my undergrad, where I was just hanging out with a friend and I had a bag of chips and I was about to throw that just to the ground. Just because, and it's shocking for me to look back now. But then my friend was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I was like, "Nothing."
Yeah.
Like, I looked at him all weird. And I remember, and I'll never forget this, but he took the bag from me. He didn't like, reprimand me or lecture me or anything. He just took my empty chips bag from me and he put it in his like backpack. I did not like where there's a place where you put your water bottle. He just put it there. And like just that simple act, I feel like just completely, opened the portal to this whole new universe for me where
Yeah.
I was like, what incentive does he have for doing this? Like nobody's watching. I'm just some guy. He's not trying to impress me, obviously. And yet it is important for him to be doing this. And shout out Nikhil Narigal. That's his name.
All right.
Yeah, he's in Germany now. So he's doing great. But anyway, yeah, I figured that might be um something out there if you're listening, and if you ever wondered why should you do this, I don't know, maybe just that what Benny said earlier, that it's your city. If you're not going to keep it clean, who is?
Yeah.
And you don't have to worry about keeping it clean, but at least don't destroy it for others. Either way, what were some other quirks that you saw in the houses that are different?
The one big difference was having paid house helpers. Like I I think, yeah, the one place I visited, I think, had 4 full-time people, one a cook, a housekeeper, and then 2 people taking care of the elderly grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
A day shift and night shift person, I guess.
Yeah.
And in America, that'd be super expensive to pay 4 full-time salaries.
Right.
But um, th- my host was explaining to me when I remarked on it. He told me that the average salary is so cheap. The cost of labor,
Mm.
the cost of low skill labor is so much cheaper than in the U.S. I think he was saying 60 cents an hour is what I calculated uh, based on the hours worked and the currency conversion.
Oh.
I mean, in America, maybe you could pay an illegal immigrant $6 an hour to do the work.
Right, exactly.
That's 60 cents an hour, and so
Right.
that explains why food was so cheap, and the auto rickshaw rides were super cheap, and anything that involved manual labor was super cheap.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, and it cuts both ways, right? Because on the one hand, you feel worried that they're not getting paid enough, but on the other hand, they're getting paid something,
yeah,
right? So, like, I don't know if
helps them, so
and it's just free markets, right?
helps them get a job. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. And yeah, I feel like again, free markets force you to work with whatever the running rate is.
right,
And if it was should have been higher, it would have been higher.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, obviously, but no, all of those are very prudent observations for sure. Tell me a little bit about the spirituality that you felt or maybe didn't feel within, but that you saw in the people. Like, are the people generally
Yeah.
religious?
It seemed like a very religious people. I was impressed at the overall religiosity. It seemed like even the non-religious people still went to the temples to pray. Maybe I was misreading some people, but one or two of my hosts that I didn't get the impression they were too uh, religious. They were going to the temples to pray, and the tourist sites, the biggest tourist sites in each city were the temples. It seemed like,
That's true.
and
And it's funny that you call them tourist sites because most of the tourism is by people from India. Yeah, that are really religious that like to see those
yeah,
temples. Yeah.
yeah. I don't know if tourism is exactly the right word, but
No, I see it is like religious tourism.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
pilgrimages or whatever.
yeah. Right.
And but yeah, and then like it seemed like every business had the name of a Hindu god in the name, and every truck had uh something religious, a Hindu god's name or something.
Like Jai Mata Di stuff.
Right. And just like there's a mural spray painted on a wall in Udaipur on a random street that says Jai Shri Ram,
Mm.
I think. Or maybe that was actually on the side of a temple. It might have actually been the side of a little temple that was spray painted with that. And
Which it would make sense.
sidewalk chalkings in Kolkata of Shiva,
Mm.
and um, maybe some pockets of India were more religious than others, but it seemed like maybe at the wedding in Kolhapur, um, people were saying Jai Shri Ram as a goodbye,
Oh, yeah.
which translates to Hail Lord Ram, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. I thought that the Midwest, America, and Southeast America were saturated Christian cultures, religiously saturated cultures, but then going to India, it takes religious saturation to a whole new level.
Really.
Every little town you pass through on the train, you see the temple spire,
Mm.
which maybe going through the U.S., you'd see church spires and every little town. But
It's very interesting.
I don't know, just
Mhm.
how in America, religion and commerce are separate. The businesses don't have religious names. The
That's
trucks don't
so
have religious stuff. But in India, the commerce and religion seems to be.
I mean, even the names, right?
Yeah.
We have so many friends literally called Deva.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think my understanding is most of my Indian friends are named after Hindu gods.
Right. Yeah, and it's
Just
I feel like I've never really actually thought about it from this lens, but you're 100% right in that.
yeah,
It almost seeps through
yeah,
every aspect of life, name, business,
right.
whatever the case might be. Even when so like apartment buildings also have names.
Uh huh.
I guess they do here as well. But here they would be like lake view apartments.
Right.
Over there it would be probably, some god,
Okay.
whatever, Nivas, which just means house.
Yeah. And in Kota, I visited the riverfront, and I was very impressed by the Kota riverfront. It's a new big tourist attraction there, and not a lot of tourists yet, but
Interesting.
they're set up for it's underrated right now.
Interesting.
But kind of the climax after walking 2 miles of palace facades, which was overwhelming in itself. The climax is this huge statue of a goddess.
Do you remember?
Masha Chambal, the river goddess. Like 30-foot tall statue, with a fountain pouring out of she has like a pot or something in her hands that's pouring water in.
Right. Interesting.
So yeah, anyway.
Just generally, what was your take on, for lack of a better term, Hinduism aesthetics, right? So the equivalent for that, obviously for Christianity, would be, like pristine churches that are really clean, community, because the whole town kind of gathers every Sunday. So
In the old days, at least.
I feel like don't you guys?
It is a strong social connection still today for people who are involved in churches, but the majority of Americans don't go to church anymore.
No, that's totally fair.
But the small towns in the old days, yes, was everybody coming together on Sunday mornings.
But from a similar lens, for Hinduism, what were some of maybe just adjectives that came to mind, or just generally, what did you feel?
Yeah, the temples were beautiful. The some of the statues of the gods were beautiful. Some were, I don't know, I don't know if it would offend anyone to say a little creepy, but
No, because they're new and you have.
I mean, so that with snakes coming out of that, for example. Oh, but anyway, I don't want to bash Hinduism or anything.
No, obviously, but it's known now you're not doing that.
Yeah, it seemed like Hinduism was a lot more about trying to win favor from gods or appease God. A lot more impersonal. Whereas in Christianity, there's a lot more emphasis on a personal relationship with God. That
Interesting.
we're actually speaking directly to God, and He hears us not because of what we're doing, but because of His grace and because of the works of the Lord Jesus.
Yeah.
And but yeah, compared with my experience on Sunday mornings of gathering with people in community, the same people every week, to praise God together and listen to teaching about God together, versus going to the Ganga Arti in Kolkata and seeing a bunch of strangers who've just come together on this particular evening, watching the professionals perform the rituals, and so much more image focused of the smoke and the censers and the idols, all worshiping a river. It's like, it's just so different.
Absolutely, and obviously without the context that they are still doing similar rituals in their homes as well. You didn't see that. But I can understand if
every home had a shrine too.
Exactly. So like I think that's the way, obviously, and it's interesting, right? Compared to like a temple separately and then the home separately. I can see how if you're just looking at your experience of a temple, it can feel that these are just kind of like almost like you're going to watch a game or something, right? You're not actually involved. But it's usually supposed to serve as a supplement, actually, if anything, because all of them are probably, doing similar rituals at home. But so if an American person currently watching this is planning on going to India, first of all, would you generally overall recommend it for most Americans, or not, or not?
Yeah, it was a really great experience. I'm glad I went. It was a lot of fun. And it was great to be with local hosts. That was a great way to do it. Because they really take care of you two different ones mentioned to me. We have a phrase, guest is gone. That's you treat the guest as well as you treat God. And I'm like, I'm not sure I deserve that, but thank you.
No, that is Atithi Devo Bhava is the in like Sanskrit phrase where that comes from. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's totally legit.
Yeah.
But you're recommending having somebody over there for the best
Yeah.
experience.
So one thing I would say to Americans wanting to visit India is maybe keep it to a week, or I mean you could stay longer and just experience a longer trip, but I maybe not try to do as fast paced of a trip as I did, although
Yeah.
I don't regret it. I'm glad I saw everything. And
Right. But you just saying maybe there was
next time I go to India, it'll just be for 1 week and try to limit it to just a couple of cities.
yeah.
I don't know. But as I have so many Indian friends and they move back, that's going to be a struggle. I'll be like, well, I want to see so and so and so and so. Hell,
We'll see. And
I want to visit 5 cities.
yeah, and they will insist
The-
selfie.
Maybe I'll end up having to take 2 each.
Yeah, but
Each race and whatever, but we'll see. Yeah.
yeah, and to close out, 3 things that every American going must do or know.
Okay. One thing to know was the bathrooms. I saw toilet paper a couple of places, but everywhere is the sprayer. And I'd never used one before, but I quickly grew to appreciate it. Yeah, I by the end of the trip I liked it more than toilet paper.
Really?
But, if you're an American traveling, you should bring toilet paper. And the showers also, there wasn't reliable hot water. And half the time my showers were from a bucket with a little pitcher. You call it a mug, we'd call it a measuring cup, but a 2-cup measuring cup or something.
Yeah.
Yes. But yeah, you just draw the warm water and you pour it out yourself. And so that was one thing to watch out for. I guess the mosquitoes at certain times of the year. There were even mosquitoes in December, but my first host was like, yeah, just leave the fan running all night and that'll keep the mosquitoes off. She's like, okay.
And there's also like devices.
Right. He showed me the mosquito zapper also.
Oh, and you have the physical zapper.
Yeah.
Also, yeah. So you mentioned
So the bathrooms.
mosquitoes. What's the third and last thing that one?
Let's see what the top one would be. One thing that comes to mind is use Uber to book the cabs. That's more reliable. Or the is it Yati Satri? Is that what it's called?
Yatri Sathi, yeah.
Yatri Sati.
Yeah.
Just use the app to book the driver so you know the price and they can't overcharge you. But
Helpful.
yeah. Oh, one other thing I'd say is just buy random things while you're there. I bought a new pair of shoes for $20. I think I got 2 pairs of shoes for $40 or something.
Yeah.
And then I bought my prescription glasses.
Oh, that's right. Yep, lens card.
I got 2 pairs of prescription glasses for the equivalent of $40.
Right.
And if you had eye exam tied in, so
And if you had time, you could have gotten like a whole dentist and tires.
yeah, somebody told me I should get my wisdom teeth removed while I was in India. I was like, I don't want to be in pain.
But you would probably save thousands of dollars if somebody decided to do that. This is not advice. And then
Oh, one really big thing. Sorry, this is not a top 3 list anymore.
that's fine.
Was so many places in India didn't take credit card.
Like if UPI.
Past credit card to UPI, pay by phone.
Yeah.
And I never got that set up. And so I was just limited to cash and ATMs and
That's somewhat surprising because it's you need I see what you
I need an Indian bank account, I think.
that's
Right?
That's right. And an Indian phone number.
Okay. Yeah. So I was just going based on cash.
That's
2 times I ran out of cash and had to go to an ATM.
well, although Google Pay, right? Wouldn't Google Pay, I don't know.
Maybe it would have worked.
Yeah, because I feel like Google Pay is universal. So if you had your dollars loaded, I feel like it would have converted and everybody accepts Google Pay. I don't know this. Maybe somebody can, comment below.
But yeah. And then phone service was another thing that actually surprised me that my Xfinity mobile, when I landed in India, I get a text saying international calling is 10 cents a minute and 50 cents a megabyte for data or something. I was like, data charges are going to add up fast, but yeah, I can send a few texts across the world for 10 cents each.
Yeah, absolutely.
But a friend of mine had loaned me his second phone. He had two, one set up for India and one set up for the US. So he loaned me my Indian phone for the trip.
Yeah, and
That was super helpful.
internet is really good, right? Every player has
Data coverage
everywhere.
pretty much, I think.
Yeah, and it's like it's almost 5G also.
I guess I would say my other favorite thing I haven't mentioned yet was the food. The food was great. It was completely different from one state to the next, but all of it was really good.
And for context, you are somebody that knows Indian.
I've had a lot of Indian food in the US, since half or more of what I had over there was completely new.
Would you say the chicken tikka butter masala over there is the same as the one here?
I don't think I even saw butter chicken over there. I'm sure they have butter chicken in places,
They do,
but
yeah, but it's just completely.
I spent 5 or 6 days with no meat at the beginning of the trip, and I didn't even miss meat.
Because Rajasthan,
I didn't even miss it.
yes, that is
Almost veg food is so good.
right. With all the dals, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was all really good.
Yeah.
So anyway, great food, kind people. Glad I went.
Well, thanks so much for taking the time, and we hope to see you back.
Yes.
Hopefully, this time you will, be able to iron out some of the kinks that did creep up this time. And until then, thank you so much for taking the time here today.
Yes, thanks for having me.
That brings us to the end of that episode with Benny. I hope you enjoyed his experiences as much as I did. Thank you all for sharing these experiences with those that continue to benefit from them. If you would like to support me, the easiest way to do that is by subscribing on YouTube and giving me up to a 5-star rating on Spotify or any of your favorite podcast apps. Something that goes a long way here is if you, by word of mouth, tell your friends and families about your new favorite podcast. Catch you all in the next one. New episodes every Wednesday.
Mom would say that and
I think we've been. Oh, that's so much nice.
Yeah, well, you can go upstairs and wait for them. Watch out the window, see if I come.